I know what a customer is, whether that's a business-to-business customer, whether we're a wholesaler, whether you're dealing B2C. Those customers, of course, I've got familiarity with and I've been involved with, but I've never been accountable for them. And there's a real difference then that you become accountable and you actually start to, of course, take more of an interest. You start to look at data, you start to look at process performance and the metrics. And it's like, wow, okay. I didn't quite understand that was the impact of this particular action that I've got going on further upstream in the supply chain.
Welcome to Chain Reaction, the video podcast for the supply chain and logistics industry. In this podcast, we speak to industry leaders who share their ideas, thoughts and anecdotes from within the logistics world.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Chain Reaction podcast. In today's episode, I'm pleased to welcome Dan Pass, who is a supply chain logistics lead at Ann Summers. He has great experience, but I would like Dan, you to tell your story. How did you fall into logistics? How that happened?
Hi, Michael. Thank you for inviting me onto the podcast. How did I fall into logistics? I think I said to you earlier that I don't think anybody gets into logistics and supply chain as a career solution. Right? We don't leave school. The careers advisor doesn't come in and say, let's get into warehousing, logistics, supply chain. Nobody really knows what this stuff is, right? Until you get involved with it and you actually start to do it. I left college, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I started a family very young. Just after I left college, I was 19, had my first child, needed a job quite quickly. Had to pay some bills and look after the family. And there was a stock control role in a warehouse, literally inventory, stock control, counting, PI checks, that kind of stuff. Right. I took that job, sort of started in the warehouse. And I was very, very fortunate that the company I joined was a really fast growing private company, really entrepreneurial leader. And I suppose predominantly because I needed to make sure my family were looked after. I'd just taken on a mortgage. I was desperately keen for more work and for new things and ultimately to increase my earnings. And this company grew rapidly and I moved very quickly from sort of stock control role into a warehouse manager role. It was a very small warehouse. It was probably less than 6,000 or 7,000 square foot. There wasn't that many products. It wasn't that complex an operation. But I got involved with that, and it was, I think actually back then it was called the stores. It wasn't even called the warehouse. It was the stores, and it very quickly got me into process improvement as the business rapidly changed and developed, and allowed me to sort of look at technology back then, 25 years ago. And we used a product called Navision. Dynamics now, as it is now, D365 it's become, but this was before Microsoft even owned it. And I learned that software and sort of then got involved with WMS and went on this really, really rapid learning curve for sort of 4 or 5 years that took me off into procurement and purchasing and all these different elements of the ERP and the WMS. I actually came out of logistics for a period and went into purchasing and procurement, spent some time over in the Far East. I was very fortunate that the opportunity was afforded to me to do sourcing and import as the business was growing. That lasted for 4 or 5 years, and through that I got into shipping and importation, containerization, freight, and of course during all of that the warehousing was growing, the logistics was growing, the infrastructure was growing, we were employing more and more people. The role became an operational one, covering procurement, warehousing, logistics and tech. And I've been there 14, 15 years, and built this sort of experience across all of logistics and supply chain and procurement. Decided I'd become a consultant and went off to try and set up my own consultancy. That was 10 years ago now I tried to do that. Not as easy as you think.
Tell me about it.
Spent quite a while trying to drum up business, but ultimately it was just little old me with a fact sheet of what I'd done, and it came to a point that I couldn't really afford to do that, and took another role with a WMS reseller called K3. Learned the ways of consulting specifically for WMS, which was a very different approach. Obviously, I'd always been a user of services and I'd always looked after my own facilities, and then becoming an advisor or a consultant was an extremely different learning experience.
Right. And now you look outside in, not inside out.
Absolutely, yeah. And I did that for sort of 3 or 4 years. And that was across different industries. It was manufacturing, it was automotive, it was some chemical customers. And of course, ERPs and WMS are not just about retail or fast moving consumer goods. They are used across
Of course, yeah.
the whole of the economy. And again, that gave me more of a rounded interest, but really sort of put me back into, well, I quite like retail. I like fast moving consumer goods. That's where I think I'm strongest. And Ann Summers were actually a customer of K3. We put the
Right.
WMS in there, which is how I came about the Ann Summers journey. K3, through that process, went into liquidation, and Ann Summers offered me an extension of a 12-month contract to do some project work aligned to the WMS that we just put in, and the troubleshooting that you have whenever you do an ERP implementation. And I've been there now for 6 years. So that 12-month contract has sort of rolled and rolled, and I am now permanently employed with the business. And that sort of 6-year period has been probably one of the most remarkable of my career, in that I joined in 2019. COVID hit quickly in 2020. So I'd come into the business with a business plan and lots of ideas of how I wanted to make change and transformation. And that was thrown out the window 6 months later as the stores closed. E-commerce became our only sales channel. We had to completely transform the way we worked, whilst, of course, keeping everybody in the warehouse safe and with all of the head office colleagues working from home. Very, very unusual sort of 12.
It was a perfect storm.
It was, yeah. And all the experience that I had, and undoubtedly anybody in the industry, nobody had done that before.
Right,
it was really quite the challenge. Excuse me. But it was a lot of fun. I think when you look back and think about, wow, look at what we managed to achieve during that time. It was remarkable that we managed to sort of sustain the business for 18 months and achieve what we achieved.
Well, I bet that during that time, your volumes peaked.
They did. We hit our record day repeatedly during that period because, when you're shipping out to stores, you're shipping out in bulk, in volume, 2, 3, 4 times a week. When all of that volume becomes online, you have to double your online profile and throughput. It's a transformation in itself, just to change the warehouse and the throughput processes. So yeah, we hit those records regularly. But it was good, and we came through that, of course. And then had other challenges, what with cost of living crises and the economic downturn, Suez Canal problems, geopolitical issues. These last 3, 4, 5 years have been quite remarkable.
Quite a roller coaster, I bet. Yes,
indeed, they have, for everybody. I mean, during that time, the way in which I've gone about my ways of working, my understanding of things has really changed. I've become more of a networker. I've sought more information, more advice, because there's so much going on. It's very, very difficult to stay on top of things sat at your desk. You need to get out and talk to people, and I've done a lot of that, and we can come on to that. But most recently, my career has taken another shift and another change, in that I've started to look after the customer services function at Ann Summers. So in logistics and supply chain, ultimately, you're always serving a customer. But in my experience, or at least in the way I've operated, it's been the internal customer. I've served business. I've provided a solution.
It's processes, it's KPIs, it's management, or how it looks internally. But the customer input actually adds in a completely new dimension.
It does, and I've never, I've been aware of it. I know what a customer is, whether that's a business-to-business customer, whether we're a wholesaler, whether you're dealing B2C, those customers, of course, I've got familiarity with and I've been involved with, but I've never been accountable for them.
Right.
And there's a real difference then, that you become accountable and you actually start to, of course, take more of an interest. You start to look at data, you start to look at process performance and metrics, and it's like, wow, okay. I didn't quite understand that was the impact of this particular action that I've got going on further upstream in the supply chain. And so it's really changed me. I was given it last year, like, look, we need you to pick this up. Okay, fine. I wasn't overly keen, if I'm being very honest. It wasn't something that sort of tickled my fancy. It wasn't something I'd really wanted to go after. And that happened just before peak, which of course is great. That's just what you want before a peak period, is a whole new thing to look after.
Just more work, yes.
Yeah, and it's the customer, of course, which is ultimately important. And for various reasons that I won't get into now, but there was a project going on with customer services that landed before peak. It left me with a bit of a challenge. And we had a really difficult period over the last 6 months in sort of adapting to these new changes. And so I was even more intent on looking at the process, looking at the data, trying to understand why my contact was this, why that particular thing was causing these particular problems. And now, whenever I look at something, across my supply chain, from the point of me putting it on a vessel to getting it back from the customer, rather than thinking, what about the warehouse logistics, P&L, costs, KPI? I'm thinking, but what would the customer do?
Yeah.
And it's just changed. It's given me a real new lens on, yes, but what if? It's great, actually, because when you do a business change project, you write a business case, you think about all of those internal metrics. What's it going to cost? What's it going to save? Is there an efficiency? Do I need people? Blah, blah, blah. And I've now got this added sort of category of, yes, but what will it do to the customer journey? Is it going to improve lifetime value? Will it repeat the number of times they buy from us? Will it reduce the dissatisfaction? What will happen to the reviews? Because, of course, we live in a world where everything's reviewed, and
Yeah.
the importance of those isn't to be misunderstood. And it's just added this layer of a complexity, but also it's given me this new lens and this new thought process, which actually I'm really enjoying. But don't tell the people that gave me the job.
Try not to. I will try not to. That actually, it's interestingly that as you were saying this, I recall the saying by Mike Tyson, who said, "Everybody has a plan until they get hit in the face." It's almost like this. So it's like, yeah, we can have in supply chain, we can have absolutely perfectly laid out plans, and then the customer just kind of, it feels like they mess everything up, but their perspective is actually indeed absolutely invaluable. But I wanted to kind of to actually pick on that. So what are the biggest challenges that that new addition of customer experience, the direct customer service side of things, how it either physically impacted kind of you, either not necessarily your thinking, but your decisions and some of the actions that you are doing, or some of the changes perhaps in supply chain?
So I've got this year on strategy, partly because of a logistical requirement, but then
Right.
because of a customer requirement. We've got two key projects, and previously, when I look at carriers, final mile delivery partners, it's been with that lens of, okay, what time can they pick up from the warehouse? How much are they going to charge me for a parcel? How many collections per day period can I get? What's their peak operation look like? What's the SLA in terms of getting all of that done? Knowing that the customer will get a delivery, but not really considering, well, when it leaves my warehouse, what happens and what's the experience for the customer, and how likely is it to be
Right.
disruptive or beneficial, or what do I need to consider in that area? That's always been done by our business, but it's always been done by a separate team. So they would be part of the project. I would do my element. I would do the negotiation with the contract with the courier. I would set up the logistics, the processes, the tech with the tech team, and then the customer service guys would go off and do their bit. And whilst we were talking, it wasn't joined up.
Right.
We're getting into that again this year, and we're looking at, well, okay, what does our customer delivery experience look like? So it's no longer a carrier project. Now it's a customer delivery experience project,
Yep.
which has all of the same elements as it would have done previously. I need to know the collection time. I need the costs. I need to make sure the IT is working. I need to know that I can, increase my demand and drop my demand based on forecast and so on. But I also need to know what that journey looks like. And I need to make sure that it's joined up so that whatever I do in logistics to get that wheel turning, it's the best solution for the customer. And
Right.
the
Yes. Yeah.
contract, I write SOPs when I do contracts. I like a document that says this is how we're going to operate.
Yeah.
And again, when I've written them, they've always been from a logistics perspective. And now there's an entire section going in about, well, what happens when it leaves my door? Really, what are the steps you're going to take? How exactly are you going to deal with the exceptions? What do my alerts look like? What are my SLAs? What's my recompense when you get it wrong? All of those things have gone into this document that, whilst they were there before, they were never as detailed. They were never as well thought through. They weren't as joined up. So that's one
Right. Yeah.
example. And the other is, well, who's actually talking to the customer? So again, getting the product in and out of the business has always been my primary focus. And now it's, well, when the customer's got a problem, whether that's with the carrier or the product itself or some other element of our services, who's talking to them? How are we talking to them? Marketing and customer service is not my forte. I am a process-driven person. I'm logical in nature. I go from A to B to C, and I try and make that efficient. That's what I've made a career out of doing, and using tech along the way to help me. So putting a human element to it now has really meant that I've got to go out and talk to people and understand what this really means and how do I do it. And of course, the buzz around AI is that it can do all these different things. It's
Right.
going to replace
Yeah.
everybody in the world of customer service, and it's going to be able to do all this good stuff. But really, how do you use that sensibly? What's it all about? You know, what do you use? When do you use it? Why do you use it? What's the cost? What's the benefit? What's the business case? And how far up the supply chain stream can you introduce it into the cycle? Is it just at the end, or actually can it be used to sort of
Mm.
build something along the way? And so projects used to be easier than they are now because I knew what I was doing and I've done it for a very long time. And now it's just bigger, it's broader with the technological advances,
Right.
and with
Right.
this additional hat on,
Yeah.
it really has broadened my scope of things, which is exciting. And it's just given me something different to think about.
You are listening to Chain Reaction. This podcast is brought to you by Phlox, the leading marketplace for the supply chain and logistics industry. Visit phlox.is to find out how you find the perfect supplier or make your services available to prospective buyers. Thanks for tuning in. Now back to the show.
Well, it is exciting, I'm sure, and it is much more complex. Obviously, there's more things to think about. But on the other hand, I'm sure it is kind of more impactful on a customer experience because now it's a more joined up approach. So I'd like to take the technology questions, obviously very exciting, the technology side of things, to dessert. But I wanted to on a customer experience side of things. So from my personal experience, I order stuff from, I don't know, Amazon, and many other kind of places. But even from Amazon, I may have a couple of deliveries a day. So when you have trucks arriving by your door, different ones and different drivers at different points in time, that to me, this is kind of this is my passion, is it feels like a waste. So there's so much empty capacity runs around, and a collaboration among the players might be a very good way forward to actually consolidate the loads. If a person has multiple orders from multiple places, can't they be consolidated and delivered in one go? So collaboration, we've spoken the other day about, that's one of the elements and one of the considerations, strategic considerations that you guys are looking at as a company, not just as you personally, but as a business. So how can we collaborate horizontally with other players, with other market participants? There's a lot of relationships in there. There's lots of trust issues in there. So can we expand? Can we dive deep into that one a little bit? Just talk about how do you think that kind of the collaboration in the marketplace is happening. We are living, there's too much, it's a lot of congestion, especially in urban areas. There's so many, as they call, white vans, just running around delivering stuff, and it's impossible to live, and it's not getting any better. Again, you are on the kind of have a front seat of seeing how the online retail and B2C volumes are growing and keep growing and have no sign of subsiding. So how do you guys play on that?
It's one of those wish list things. And it would be ideal if we could all get together and have a big conversation, put all the retailers in a room, get all the suppliers in the room, whether they be inbound import suppliers, whether they be carriers, whether they be service providers, whatever it is. And could we all sort of share the problems and get together and save money, save the climate, save carbon, improve the customer journey, etc. But it's not that easy. I found myself increasing my network of people over the last few years, particularly, as I say, because of COVID and then because of the relevant supply chain issues that we have across the industry, because retail has gone through a difficult period, because I've taken on new things. I'm having to learn and talk to people constantly about, well, what do you do and how do you find this? And do you have this problem? And is this normal? And what's the SLA for that? And
Right.
So the way I've started to collaborate more is purely by putting myself out there. Doing things like this podcast today is just allowing my thoughts to be heard by other people, because they might resonate, and somebody might pick the phone up to me and say, hey, that thing you said, and here's a solution for the problem that you've got. So the first thing to do is to find out who's doing what, right? We have to
Right.
talk to each other to understand if we've got consistent challenges, and that we might be able to go away and collaborate on a solution. There are things in the marketplace that sort of take us part way there. So things like carrier management solutions, where at the checkout, you've got one process, one portal, one company linking you into multiple carriers. The customer nowadays, the modern customer, wants choice. I don't really want to have 10 or 15 carrier accounts and 10 or 15 trucks turning up at the door. Is there a way that I can get that centralize with one provider, but utilize all of those final mile services. So there are solutions out there that do that,
Right.
but they don't all do it brilliantly, and they do it all in different ways. And it ultimately still means that when it leaves my warehouse, it still gets to the consumer on different vehicles. The problem you've got with that particular industry then is, of course, their final mile proposition is different. Royal Mail have got post workers. Every have got people in their cars as private contractors. DHL might have their own fleet. DPD the same. So how would you even consider bringing all of that together? Some of the sort of PUDO and out of home services like lockers are helping that because there is a centralized point there.
Right.
We know
Yeah.
there's a carbon benefit, for example, in doing that because they're making
Mm.
one bulk drop off. But I think there are so many areas that when you think about economy of scale and production, is there an opportunity to bulk buy your packaging with a similar base retailer if you're not buying branded materials, for example? Is there a way to centralize labor resource within an area as long as you're not competing for the same people during the same period? Is there an agency that might help you in the summer and somebody else in the winter? And does that mean you've got a consistent workforce? I mean, there are so many opportunities across supply chain to have those conversations. But commercially, our business is aligned to be able to do that. Our suppliers are open enough to be able to do that. Does
Right.
your timeline and your own strategic workload allow for that to happen? Are the timelines synced up? And so it's a real sort of blue sky thinking approach, isn't it? Collaboration in that regard. I can't speak highly enough of networking for sure, where the industry is changing as quickly as it is, both with new challenges every day, but with new technology every day, having that link into other people that are doing things, because I can't do everything myself. My priorities are variable.
Mm.
Somebody else might have on their pad the thing I want to do next year. So let's learn from that. And I might have just done the thing that person wants to do. So they're really, really useful. And that's not both bilaterally in terms of across my own network, my peer group, but also suppliers, talking to suppliers all the time
Mm.
about what they do, what's going on in the market, having those sort of market research conversations, getting people in to see your operation, because although that might not be your objective right now, and it takes time to have those meetings, and sometimes you think, well, I've got other stuff to do, I do try and fit them in as much as I can, because somebody will walk into my warehouse and say, have you thought about this?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's like, I didn't think about that because my head's over here in the
Mm.
customer service world this week, and that hadn't crossed my mind. And similarly, if you go to another location yourself and have a look around another retailer's operation, and you see something that just hadn't been on your agenda at all, hadn't been on your radar. So yeah, collaboration is important from a personal perspective, and of course from a future opportunity and career development perspective, it's a good thing.
Mm.
But to answer those questions that you don't even know you're asking, I think is really valuable.
That's yeah, it's a big challenge. We're trying to collaboration is at the core of what we do here at Flux. But and my question to you would be, what do you see as kind of the main challenge when you raise that topic with people? Is that kind of internal resistance to change, as in let's not rock the boat, or is that some concerns like some trust issues? Some concerns about like, well, I'm afraid I'm going to lose control, or I'm afraid that somebody's going to know my sensitive, commercially sensitive data, or something along these lines. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think all of the above. I mean, you can put NDAs in place, etc. But the minute you start to put your solutions, your operation in with something else, it creates risk.
Right.
So
Yep.
what if the other party doesn't meet their obligations? What if the deal solution proposal is constructed in such a way that you are then at the mercy of somebody else's success or failure or
Right.
adoption? How do you manage it from a P&L perspective, from a financial perspective? How does that work? For example, if I've got warehouse capacity is a conversation that we've sort of flirted around with. And what if I've got some capacity in my warehouse and I want to sublet that, but I've only got an off-seasonal period to do so? How do
Right.
I do
Yeah.
it? How do I utilize my labor for that benefit to offset the cost of the rent? But then what about the WMS integration? And is that disruptive? What if then that sort of short-term rental agreement rolls into my peak season? All of that, and I think ultimately risk is the thing, right?
Yeah.
If you stand on your
Absolutely.
own 2 feet, there is risk because you stand and fail by your own success, and ultimately you might not get the
Mm.
best deal. You might not be able to use an economy of scale. You might not be big enough in a particular area. So you might have a deficit in trying to go it alone,
Mm.
but the risk is all your own, right? Everything you do, you stand and fall by. If you try and take the operational, sustainable, financial benefit of collaboration, you mitigate that risk of it being all on you. But of course, you open yourselves up to the risk of it being all on somebody else.
Yeah,
So,
indeed.
I think there are certain things you can collaborate on, and idea sharing and thoughts and conversation is definitely one. Trying to bring businesses together to achieve something collectively,
Mm.
particularly when it's ingrained in your operation, is quite difficult. But certainly, it would be great to be able to try and do something like that.
Right. Well, that kind of sets up, I think, my sort of the last section. That's what I said, that we're going to keep technology for dessert, and this is kind of where my our thoughts are, kind of as Flocks, and what we are doing from our kind of the technological point of view in the marketplace. We believe that technological enablement will actually help kind of move that kind of collaboration resistance to collaboration to well, at least minimize it to a level of actually people will start working with each other, because technology enables. There was a very nice project that we had with on the European Union kind of banner, was around trustee services. So when you have a third party, so you're not necessarily you're sharing your commercially sensitive information directly with your competitors. It's actually you sharing with a trusted third party service provider, a technology service provider. They will host your data, analyze your data, and then produce the results that are relevant to you and to you only, based on the pool of information from everybody. But no party other than that centralized trustee service will see the whole picture. So there is a minimization of the possibility of leakages of the information, and that there's a lot of technological solutions that could be supporting this, but this is our belief. So I would like to ask you, what is your take on this? You also mentioned the word AI, which could potentially be a helping hand in that process as well. So how do you think technology can play up, and whether it can accelerate adoption of such approaches?
Yeah, I mean, technology is a no-brainer for efficiency for sure, and of course it continues
Yeah.
to develop at a rapid pace. And we're big adopters of technology where the business case stacks up internally. Ultimately we want to make sure that everything we do efficiently, and where we spend our human time, if you want to call it that's
Right.
productive and that's well spent, and that we're doing the work we should be doing, and not bogged down in processes that can be automated, data that can be automated and improved. And I think that applies outside of our own four walls as well.
Mm-hmm.
Market research, opportunities to collaborate in a space that is technical. So you haven't got huge amounts of time and resource being spent. It's clear and open, and the opportunity is there to share ideas, to share thoughts, to get involved with something. Sort of remotely at a distance, I suppose, because it's technological. You haven't got to go and do anything really physical with anything. There's
Yeah.
somebody there offering a service, offering a provision that you can tap into. If we looked at warehouse space as an option there, being able to go online and rent something short term, like you've got with this sort of personal storage lockers and personal facilities.
Right.
You don't want to go out and get a 6, 12, 18-month lease on a brand new building, or a subcontracted building. Can you do something more ad hoc? Is that an opportunity? I don't know of services that you can go and do that across the industry. Can you go and get ad hoc carriers? Not really. You've got to have a bit of a relationship with somebody in order to start working with APIs and things. Of course, you can go and send a single parcel, but that's not quite the requirement. You can't go and
Mm.
rent a seasonal piece of operation for that kind of thing, not in any sustainable way anyway. So I think there is an opportunity for technology to help certain solutions. Again, trying to sort of sit and think about examples of that is quite difficult, because there are so many permutations, aren't there? And of course, AI is opening up these opportunities of unknown capability.
Right. Oh, apologies. No, this is very interesting, and yeah, technology is certainly going to be kind of helpful in some areas, but I completely agree with you. It only helps people to be more effective. it does not replace people. In doing, I mean, it can be doing kind of heavy math. It can be doing very routine processes as soon as you kind of worked out the workflow and so forth. But it's not gonna replace the relationship. It's not gonna replace the kind of the negotiations and the agreements and the handshakes. So it's a combination of the two. We had a podcast recently with a professor who's been. And a guy they've been running sort of AI system for customs clearance documentation, and he was actually talking about kind of a hybrid, a hybrid or AI enhanced still human performance. So the people fear that, okay, well, some people fear or some people predict that AI will replace so many jobs. I think they will replace the jobs they don't want to embrace the technology. If people want to embrace the technology, they're actually going to get even more effective and even more stable in the in job security point of view, because they're going to become more valuable for the businesses that are in. So I think this is the way the technology is going. Dan, I think thank you very much. We've taken quite a lot of time. We've covered quite a lot of quite heavy topics, and it was very, very interesting. And I'm absolutely keen to continue this conversation. Collaboration is definitely my passion, and this is exactly what we're doing at our business, and we try to bring technology to address that. So I'm very keen to obviously have that podcast kind of aired and promote, and I hope we can have another conversation on the subject sometime later with a bit more progress in physical collaboration reality.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I've enjoyed the conversation, Michael. Thank you for the invite. And yeah, let's see what the next 12 months brings as we start to get into our new financial year. You know, optimism is bountiful and plentiful at the moment, and we've got a good strategy ahead of us as a business. But it's definitely going to rely on collaboration industry-wide, on collaboration internally to deliver these projects. You know, we want to make sure that we do that efficiently and lean, and we'll be using technology to collaborate within our own four walls. But yeah, I think I'd love to pick up the conversation further in time and see how we get on with things. But in the meantime, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Dan. It was great having you. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks for tuning into Chain Reaction. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please don't forget to subscribe. If you have a story or opinions to share from your sector, we'd love to hear from you. Simply reach out to Chain Reaction or visit flox.is for more information. See you next time.